You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. Well, the news hit like a gulp of bitter cold brew. Seattle-based Starbucks announced last month the company would be closing hundreds of stores and laying off 900 corporate employees. Yesterday, it was reported that another 369 employees will be laid off here in Washington state in December due to store closures. This follows a restructuring plan laid out by CEO Brian Niccol. Here to walk us through the latest out of Starbucks HQ is Heather Haddon. She covers restaurants for the Wall Street Journal, and she's been following this all year. Heather, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much.
So can you help break down the layoff numbers for me? I mentioned we just got word in Washington here, where Starbucks is based, that there's going to be 369 additional layoffs. 900 corporate employees was previously reported. But with these store closures, 100 stores closing, that means a lot more retail, like baristas losing their jobs, right? What do these numbers mean?
Yeah, so in my story, I reported thousands because when you think of all these different store closures, which are in the hundreds, they won't specify exactly how many, but I think hundreds is safe to say across the country. You think every store, 5, 10, 15 employees, maybe. I mean, then you're really getting into the thousands. So, yeah, so there's the 900 corporate employees. And I also got that data that came out from Washington just yesterday. I mean, you just look at one state, 30 stores, over 350 people, and you amplify that across the country, and we're talking, yeah, a lot of people are being impacted.
So Brian Niccol took over as Starbucks chairman and CEO last September, and he's kind of been billed as a turnaround leader. What are his primary goals since he's taken over, Heather?
Yeah, so he, like you said, started about a year ago, and when he got to Starbucks, there was a lot of challenges there. Same-store sales have been falling for several quarters. Costs were only rising, and so he's had to make some pretty big changes quickly. And I think he's wanted to do this, maybe within the first year of him being there to try to move on to growth in the future. So his focus is trying to make the stores better places to be in. So kind of the Starbucks of old, where you could sit down with your laptop and spend a lot of time in the cafe and want to do that is what he's trying to recreate. And so part of the store closures is to concentrate the company on running stores that it can do profitably and with the environment that it wants for customers and their baristas. So the stores that they closed, they said were unprofitable or just did not have the store environment that would support this new, more hospitable cafe environment that they're trying to create. He's also, just looked at the organization overall, and I think has said that, we need to restructure. We have too many layers of employees and corporate employees, and, many of them working in Soto, in, South Seattle. We need to make some changes there. And so he's done that with 2 rounds of layoffs now, and he's trying to make a more efficiently run company that's focused on better run stores, nicer stores, and just, yeah, has a bit less, I guess, corporate function.
You have an exclusive on what's called Project Bloom behind the scenes at Starbucks. Can you walk us through how that went down? Project Bloom, like the code word for this restructuring.
So Project Bloom, from my reporting, started earlier this year, and it was basically a project within Starbucks that involved many different departments, but to really take a hard look at the company stores and figure out by those metrics, set some real specific metrics. If the store was not profitable, didn't have a path to profitability, or just couldn't offer the environment that would support customers and baristas, that they just had to cut it. And so that work, to assess the whole U.S. store portfolio took a lot. And so, it started earlier this year, but as the months went on, I think, the company really wanted to get this done by the end of their fiscal year, which ended at the end of September. And so there was a real sprint to try to get all that work done. And then once this was all announced, it was days, just days to close these stores. So, to get rid of equipment, to get rid of dispose of it, those assets, dispose of milk, dispose of cups, then tell all the baristas, tell the store managers. So yeah, it has been quite a big undertaking. And of course, it's still going on because baristas, a lot of them are still waiting to see if they might be able to get a transfer or if they really are laid off with the company for good until they can open new stores again.
I'm just struck locally at the list of stores in Washington state that are closing. I mean, we'll talk about the reserve roasteries in just a second because I think those have a very specific sort of iconic status for Starbucks as a company. But just the regular retail stores, I mean, it almost is like a map of the neighborhoods around the Puget Sound region that I've lived. Like the downtown Kirkland store is closing, Ballard, the Market Street location, Eastlake Avenue, the one that I used to go to when I worked morning radio. And it was the only thing that was open early mornings to get some caffeine. A ton of stores around our region are shuttered or shuttering. And I have to imagine this reflects nationwide the kinds of places, like even these, downtown areas that seem to have high visibility and perhaps are something that would have value for Starbucks as like a marketing or brand awareness location. That seems to not have been any consideration at all. Right, Heather? I mean, this was just about the pure profitability of each of these locations.
Yeah, with that, with the roastery in Seattle, which of course, yeah, it's just like a flagship to the brand. The company did specifically address that and said, they're still committed to having these flagship stores, these kind of, where you get all the merch and the expanded food and all the beverages, but that store just could not make money. And so they decided to cut it. I mean, the reserve store in the headquarters they're cutting. So yeah, I think, this was a tough exercise. I mean, they just cut the ones that just did not make sense for them to run anymore. A store near me in Chicago is being closed, and that drive-through was always so busy, but they're cutting it. It just did not make sense for them for whatever reason. So
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the retail space in all of these areas across the country that these Starbucks stores had been somewhat anchors and also like community meeting spaces in a lot of places. Just the removal of those and what it means, reverberating across these different neighborhoods. I'm not trying to be like over dramatic about the importance of a Starbucks in a various neighborhood, but just again, it's a lot of locations all at once. Can you tell me, how did employees respond and how have they been responding to these changes? Again, very rapid changes.
yeah, I think employees have been, the ones who are losing their jobs or uncertain if they're still going to have a job with this company are sad. I mean, this is, a place that a lot of employees have come to, think of as part of their identity of them working for Starbucks, let alone, really industry leading benefits, college tuition, other health benefits that you really don't get in a lot of other retail jobs. Starbucks says that they are providing good severance for these folks that will no longer be with the company. But, this is still hard. This is a tough job market to suddenly be an hourly worker looking for a job. So, I think there's a lot of folks who are upset right now. And I think the company says, we just have to manage through this. They hope to hire some of these folks back eventually when they start growing stores again, this fiscal year, but that's going to take time. So this is a tough time for a lot of folks.
How about Starbucks Workers United, which has organized hundreds of stores across the country? How's the union responding to this news, which includes a lot of closures of unionized stores, right?
Yeah, so we don't know exactly how many stores are being closed, period, but the union has identified that quite a number of union stores are being closed, and the company and the union have had some negotiations about how those closures will be handled and how those baristas will be treated. I think the union says that they've gotten a number of concessions through those discussions. The company says they were minor, but acknowledging that they are working with the union in this process. So that does mean that a number of union stores will close, and the union is trying to grow, but it's tough. They still don't have a contract. They still haven't been able to hammer that out. I mean, they have made progress, but I think the biggest things, like what it means economically in terms of pay, is still to be resolved, and so that's tough. They still don't have a contract. I'm not quite sure when they will.
How's Wall Street responding to all of this?
So Wall Street, I think they expected these cuts to come. And, the first day they were made, stock didn't actually do much. I think a lot of Wall Street did expect that this was going to happen since, it's gone up. It's actually gone down a bit this week. I think under, some concerns that customers just maybe aren't coming back to the degree they would hope. But, on balance, I would say this is what Wall Street wants. I mean, they want Starbucks to become a more efficient company with less costs, and they think Brian is the guy to do it. I mean, this is what he did at Chipotle when he was the CEO there, and they think he is the guy to do it here. I mean, Starbucks is a big, complicated company. It's a global operation. It has so many stores. It's it has a whole retail business. You pick up the coffee and in the grocery store. So this is a big operation, but they think, he is the guy to do this. And so they want him to make some changes to try to get, the company to grow again, to be profitable again, to improve the margins. I mean, the margins have really taken a hit. So he's their guy.
I'm speaking with Heather Haddon with the Wall Street Journal, who has been following the decision-making process behind the closure of hundreds of Starbucks stores and then the layoffs of thousands of employees resulting from that. Just final question for you. Obviously, we are not in the era anymore of a new Starbucks opening on every corner. What is next for Starbucks, and what should people be expecting to see out of Brian Niccol next?
Well, if you've gone to a Starbucks store lately, you might see their new protein beverages.
Gosh, that protein is absolutely everywhere these days. There's like an obsession.
Yeah, there is. And Starbucks is hoping to jump on it. So get protein in your beverage. So Brian is hoping to innovate. I think we'll see new beverages, some new food options. But their real focus, again, is trying to make the environments in their stores to be better. So spending on what they call uplifts of their stores. So making the lighting better, the painting better, just kind of making them a more welcoming environment to be in. Trying to make sure order sequencing is better so people can pick up their beverages and not have to wait a really long time after ordering. So I would say really working on the fundamentals, again, of these stores to make sure they're operating well is what I think the company is going to be doing. Also, they're doing more advertising. So you might have seen the Taylor Swift tie-in they did in Nashville recently with a new album. They're going to be an Olympic sponsor. So they're going to be more visible in certain ways, maybe that you're not used to seeing them, so much TV or some of these sponsorship and brand deals. But correct, there might not be a new Starbucks or opening on your corner anytime soon.
In Seattle, Starbucks has already, reached such ubiquity and such fusion with Seattle's identity in some ways that I have a hard time believing that we will have even more Starbucks around us at all times. But it'll be interesting to see that, especially on the national broadcasts and, just following what's going on with this important local still company. Heather Haddon with the Wall Street Journal. Really appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. By the way, this show is only possible because listeners support us. If you are able to give right now, check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.